Okay, now for this one, we are going to delete this object that we added in our scene. And I'm going to Unity Reflect under my assets, my packages. And then under the runtime model, there's the Unity Reflect prefab. Here, I'm going to drag that into the scene. In most cases, it will pop up with this importers for Text Mesh Pro. So you can click on import. We'll start that. You don't have to import the examples. So you can skip that one. Just close it. And what you'll see here is, if we go to 2D, basically my prefab. So if I run this, it's going to run the Unity Reflect viewer that you saw earlier on my machine. And from here, you can actually export this or publish it to any other operating system, and you would have that same functionality. So when we open that Reflect viewer, this is what we actually opened. It was just one that was exported for Windows from here. And it has all of the same functionality. There's the webinar sample. I can open that. It will open that model. Just take note, you can't actually change the account here while it's running inside Unity. If you export and build it to an operating system, you will be able to change the account. When it's running inside Unity, it takes that account from whatever you are signed with in here. Now, note that I don't have any model in my scene yet. And if I import that webinar sample, let's open it. You can see it starts building the project, and from here I have that same functionality that I had in the Reflect viewer. So using the same keys, same mouse button, everything, I have that. But in my scene, I can see the model, but as soon as I stop this, let's stop running the Reflect viewer, that model disappears. So I don't have any access to it anymore. Now if we go to the Reflect prefab and I expand this, down here I have this root object. So I'm going to run the scene again and keep an eye on that. It's showing me all of my projects. Nothing has changed here, but as soon as I open one of these projects, you will see that I can now expand this. And underneath that root, I have instances, and underneath that, I have the object or the project, again, with all of the different elements. Now, this is something that took me a while to understand or to figure out, and that is if you want to make any changes to this at runtime, so let's say through scripting, you want to make any changes to your model, how do you actually access that? And the answer is with the root. So the safest way would be, or the quickest way would be to add any scripts that you do to the root, have it search through the children of that root at runtime based on whatever parameters you set, and then apply the changes to the objects that it finds. In our next lesson, that is exactly what we will do. But before we get to that, so just that you understand the difference between running it like this and importing the model, is by doing it like this, I'm only running the viewer. So it's a very lightweight application, and the Reflect viewer server is actually doing most of the heavy lifting in the background instead of running it inside the Unity game engine. Now here I have to admit as well, I'm not the expert on how exactly that is done. And when I speak to the developers, a lot of it just goes over my head. I also know that they're working on changes, and it's probably going to be by the end of June with the next release that will change how this is accessed and how the whole model is streamed into the scene. But until that happens, this is how you would access everything. So again, if I close this, have a look, all of that will disappear. And again, at this stage, I only have the root object available to me. A final thought before we move on to the next lesson. Currently, there are no events built into Reflect that tells the model or the project that everything is done streaming and that the whole model is loaded. So be careful when adding a script to the root object that it doesn't execute before the whole model is actually loaded. Otherwise, it may miss some of the elements. Okay, so that's it for looking at the streamed model or the runtime model. And in the next lesson, we'll have a look at the structure of the Reflect menu system and how you can create your own additional menu items.